Hello, everybody. This is Keith Caldwell. I just want to say happy birthday to Randall. Today, we're going to discuss the recently enacted ABLE Act and how to better use this important special needs planning tool. I'm your host, Keith Caldwell of Special Needs Org. And Ryan, why don't you go ahead and introduce yourself and tell us a little bit about your company for those watching that do not know you.
Sure. It's Ryan Platt, and with a firm called a Special Needs Plan. And we've been serving families that have a loved one with special needs since 2005. And so we are excited to talk with everybody today about the ABLE Act. But more importantly, just talking about the ABLE Act is more about, okay, what will these accounts do, how to possibly use them for families, kind of what are the advantages, disadvantages, and different ways that families can start thinking about them.
Okay, great, Ryan. I also wanted to let the viewers know about an upcoming show that we have called The Top 10 Mistakes Parents Make in Terms of Special Needs Planning, and Ryan will be our guest for that, and we'll be sure to send you information as well. But my name is Keith Caldwell, as I mentioned, and I'm just a father with a child with special needs, and I created this website to help sort of answer some of the questions I had as it related to the planning for my son. So Ryan, if you don't mind, let's go ahead and dig in. What is the ABLE Act and what should we know about it?
Yeah, I mean, Keith, I appreciate you asking that question again. For everybody that doesn't know, Keith has done a fantastic job of putting all this together, as well as we did a series in 2014 that covered a lot of topics of special needs planning. And I know that those are still documented in case people want to go back and take a look at them as well. But to answer your question about the ABLE Act, the ABLE Act was something that was introduced, I believe, all the way back in 2006 to try to give basically some level of relief to families, but also to individuals that have a diagnosis, that have a disability, so that they can actually save more than that $2,000 number in their name. At this point, in order to qualify for many of the necessary benefit programs, an individual needs to only have $2,000 or less in their name in order to qualify for things like SSI, which provides a monthly income. Medicaid, or in California, Medi-Cal, which not only provides health care, but also can provide a number of other services that help to pay for housing and transportation and employment support or supportive employment. And so it really helps so many areas of life. And before the ABLE Act and the soon-to-be coming ABLE accounts, an individual could only have $2,000 in their name. And so with the ABLE account, now an individual can actually own an account and have an account in their name and save more than $2,000 for themselves, but yet still be eligible for SSI and Medicaid.
Okay. Now, as I understand it, and as you know, I'm a layperson. Each state is who's going to draft the regulations, or how are we going to find out about it? Is each state responsible for creating something?
Good question. So the ABLE Act itself has outlined some of the main parameters. So, for example, you know, an individual can save more than $2,000 in the account, and then the first kind of ceiling, if you want to say, in terms of dollar amount in the account, is $100,000. So if they get to $100,000 and then go $1 over, that individual would then lose access to that SSI, that monthly income, until their account comes back down below $100,000. Now, if it goes above $100,000, they would still receive the Medicaid services, but would lose the income. And again, that income can be pretty significant. You know, right now it's $734 a month, so you know, over $8,500 a year. So it can be a significant thing to lose for an individual. You know, some of the other parameters that the ABLE Act has put into play with these accounts is the age of 26. those individuals who were disabled after the age of 26. So, for example, and we have families that we serve in this situation where, let's say, their child had a car accident or had a traumatic brain injury, or a veteran that was fighting for our freedom overseas comes back with a traumatic brain injury at 27 or 28 or 30. Well, they're not eligible to open the ABLE account. You have to be deemed disabled before the age of 26.
That's unfortunate. And is that an arbitrary number that was come up, or is there some rationale behind it?
Yeah, there was definitely rationale. One of the things people always ask, why wasn't it passed sooner? Well, it comes down to the federal government trying to find the money to pass it, right? Because this account is going to be an after-tax contribution, but then as long as it's used for what they're calling qualified disability expenses, then the growth inside the account is not taxed on an annual basis. And when the money's pulled out to use it for these qualified disability expenses, the money will also not be taxed. So because there's tax revenue lost with the money in these accounts, the government, our Congress always wants to be what's called revenue neutral. That's kind of the term, right? If they put a benefit in, they want to make sure there's money somewhere else to pay for it. And so what happened is, in 2006, there was no age limit, but and there were a number of other things in it at that point, but it was going to cost $20 billion over I believe a 10-year period. Wow. Well, to compromise over the years, they had to add the age limit and a few other things into it, so that now the cost is down to $2 billion, and they were able to find that money in other areas of government to pay for it. So that's probably the major reason for it. And unfortunately, it is going to disqualify some people from using it. Some of the other families that we work with, their individual, their child or brother or sister, might be diagnosed with autism at 27 or 28 years old, right? Because maybe they were pretty good in school, they were able to go to college, but they couldn't function in the workforce, but they never had a diagnosis because they were pretty good in school. Right. And then all of a sudden they went through diagnosis later on in their 20s, and they get diagnosed with autism, and they have a tough time working and in the social environment of work and understanding that. And it's unfortunate, but those folks are going to kind of be left out a little bit as well.
Right. Well, it sounds like you really need to understand how this could work for you. So, who is going to be writing the regulations on this? Do you know at this point?
Yeah, in terms of more of the details of the account, we don't know all the details yet, because what happens is, after it got passed, so it's law now. What happens is the Treasury Department is going to put all the other facets to it. So they're going to have they're going to put the rules in place in reference to, what paperwork do you need to open the account, right? I mean, what paperwork are you going to have to show that you've been deemed disabled before the age of 26 in order to qualify to open the account? How are they going to regulate or manage or account for those qualified disability expenses? What is the list going to be? What's going to be the responsibility of the parent or the guardian or the individual that has a special need or disability that has that account, in terms of accounting for how they use the money? Because I'm fairly confident that it's not going to be an account that you can just use willy-nilly and there'll be no oversight, right? There's going to be oversight probably by the Social Security office and maybe even the IRS, especially when individuals are going for their benefit review for SSI and Medicaid, continued qualification for that. They're going to audit these ABLE accounts, I'm sure they will, to ensure that the money's being used for those qualified disability expenses. And then I'm sure if the money's not, they're going to have some type of ramification in there of, all of a sudden it doesn't count as an ABLE account anymore. Now that money's going to count towards that individual's $2,000 number again. I'm sure there's going to be some type of recourse if it's not used properly. We just don't know exactly what that is yet. So the Federal Treasury Department's going to write that, and then it's going to go to each state to determine if the state is going to offer the ABLE account. And the reason that I say that is it's written in the 529 section. I'm sure a lot of people have read about it. And some articles I've read are calling them a 529 ABLE because it's in that area of the tax code with 529 college accounts. If people are familiar with those, you know how those work is each state kind of sponsors a 529 plan, and then each state goes out and gets the money manager to kind of to run the program. So, for example, you know, the state of Virginia uses a mutual fund manager called American Funds, right, to run their 529 plan. So the only options you have in that program are mutual funds from the company American Funds. You know, I think Fidelity runs New Hampshire, and you know, so there's a lot of different companies that do that. So we're not sure yet how it's going to play out and which states are going to offer them. But that's all to come this year, and so you know, Keith and I expect to do several of these on this topic as we continue to learn more.
No, absolutely. Well, I see a question up here, Heather. Why don't we pull up how the states recover the Medicaid, because I think it sort of pertains to what you were just talking about. So we have a question here, so we'll pull that up.
Yeah.
It says, how will the states recover their Medicaid dollars on the passing of the beneficiary? How deep can the go, and what I can't read that. And what if we live in a very conservative state which may try to bend other parts of federal incursion into their lives? You want to help answer that, Ryan, about in terms of Medicaid payback?
That's a great question. I think that came from Bill.
Yeah, Bill.
If I noticed correct. Bill, thanks a lot for that question. That's a really important distinction with this account that I really want parents to know, and I want other advisors to know. I know we have several other financial advisors and planners that have tuned in, and I appreciate them being here because they want to learn and serve their families. And certainly I want them to know that we're here to help them too, ensure that when this does all roll out that the families they serve get it done right. So for other advisors, please feel free to call us. We're here for you guys too. But the Medicaid payback is a big item to talk through, right? And that's part of how are we going to use this account? How will families really use it in their life? And so one of the drawbacks to this account, again, going back to that revenue neutral decision at the federal government, is that any money left in this account at the passing of the individual with the disability, right? So, for example, if John has $80,000 in this account when he's 70 years old, and he passes away with $70,000 in there, and he's been receiving Medicaid benefits for his entire life, what the government's going to do and Medicaid's going to do is say, okay, well, we have provided you X amount of Medicaid benefits, and the cost to that was Y, right? If what they're going to do is they're going to say, okay, we get first crack at that $70,000 left in that account. Wow. So before it goes to any other beneficiary. So if it's 65 or 70 or $100,000, they're going to get paid back first for the benefits that they provided.
So let me get this straight. So does that mean essentially that we're paying for it? So it's just sort of like a lien, if you will. So the state or the government pays this benefit on our child's behalf, but upon that child's passing, that money comes back to the state to reimburse them. Is that what you're saying?
That's how it's written right now. Do we know if there's going to be a limit on it? We don't know yet. Like, for example, are they going to limit it to, okay, if there's $70,000 in the account, the limit's only $50. They can take back half, right?
Right.
We don't know yet if that's going to be the case. I'm going to assume it's probably going to be as much as they paid and as much as in the account that they'll get reimbursed for or reclaimed or paid back for. And so that's again the big disadvantage, which I always want to make sure families understand. Certainly it's a wonderful account, and it is a fantastic account for an individual with a disability. What we want to do is make sure we use it in the most effective way to provide as much independence for them as we can. And so one of the things I look at is, one, I first look at that $100,000 limit before we lose an income, right? $100,000, once we hit that number, we really don't want to fund anymore because we lose the SSI, we lose an income. The other side of it is, you know, it's what I'm thinking about is it's not necessarily a place for parents or grandparents or aunts and uncles to try to fund and support their child's lifetime needs through that account. And the reason is one, that $100,000 limit and then income's gone, but two, because of that payback provision in there. So the accounts that we all have heard of before, the special needs trust, those things are still going to be very, very, very relevant. Now, again, $100,000 is nothing to sniff at, right? But even for middle income families that, let's say, are working, you know, a lot of them will have group life insurance just through work that may be more than $100,000. Right? And so all of a sudden, even though we might not think we have a lot, if we pass away, we may have more than we think we do.
Well, that's a good question, because I understand the law to say that only $14,000 per year could be put into this account. Is that right? So
yes, that is right.
Even if someone were to have a $100,000 life insurance policy and put it into this account, if my understanding is correct, wouldn't that disqualify that account from being an able account at that point?
It seems that way at this time. It seems that way at this time, right?
Right.
And that's going to be confirmed for us one way or the other once the Treasury Department is finished writing all those regulations around it. But yes, as it's written today, that's how you would read it today, because you can't put more than $14,000 in there or you come up against a disqualifying event.
So it sounds like it's a tool, but we need to really, really understand how to apply the tool and use that tool.
Right. So I'll give you a couple instances of where you might want to think about where it really comes into play. You know, one could be, you know, depending on your child's development. You know, again, there are so many programs opening up for individuals with disabilities at different levels of ability after their grade school, high school years are over, right? And so this could be an account where we save for some of those expenses, you know? Just like you put a college 529 plan in for your child that you think is going to go to college, well, maybe some of these programs that are out there your child can go to, and that's maybe where you want to save some of that money. Because one of those things for qualified disability expenses is education. So that would qualify for that. The area that I see it just as an unbelievable win for families and individuals with disabilities is for that adult who's leaving or is already in, who's leaving school, entering a workforce or the ability to work, and those individuals are already in that space, right? Before this ABLE Act and the soon-to-be ABLE accounts, with the families that we work with, we had to jockey around how we're going to use their money and adjust their income level from working part-time jobs because they really couldn't save any money. We had to get rid of it. We either had to buy stuff we didn't need, like we need another iPad, even though we had one last year, but we have to keep under that $2,000 number. Well, I don't know, we go buy a TV. We buy whatever we can to keep under the $2,000 number from their hard-earned dollars, from the fruits of their labors. And what are we teaching them? We're teaching them to be frivolous with money, right? And we're not teaching them good money habits on how money works. So where I see this account as I mean, I get goosebumps thinking about it, is that you know, our children, our brothers, our sisters that have a disability can now do what we do, right? If we have a job, we can start to save our own money, right? They're not saving it in mom and dad's name anymore. Now it's my money. I can save my money. I have a goal that whatever it is that it's going to cost me $5,000. Well, I have a goal now. I can watch my money. I can save my money. I can learn how to do that. I can learn how hard work turns into savings and goals for me in the future. That is going to provide such a level of confidence, and I think such a level of feeling of success and worth for an individual, and they don't have to hide their money. They don't have to shuffle it around. I mean, I can tell you this year, Keith, I've worked with so many parents who are knocking on the door of $2,000 in their child's 401k because they've been working at a job, putting money in, and the parents were like, oh, this is a good idea, this is a good idea, and all of a sudden, somebody told them about the $2,000 number, and they come running to my office going, ah, what do we do, right? Well, now we're going to have something better than, okay, well, we need to go get a first-party special needs trust, put the money in there, but there's really not going to be any money left because it's going to cost us $1,800 to set the trust up. Right. So, you know, so it opens up just, I think it's a fantastic. Here's kind of the bottom line for me right now, right, in terms of everything I know right now is this is a great account for the individual with the disability.
Not for
help them. Right, to put their money in it, you know, again, and it can be everything from they're growing up, they're getting birthday gifts, they're getting, you know, holiday gifts, they're getting Christmas gifts, Hanukkah, whatever it is, they're getting money for different things. Well, now there's an account that you can put the money in for them instead of it just sitting in a savings account. I was with a family this morning. They're like, yeah, you're right. We stopped putting money. She gets birthday gifts and Christmas gifts, and we stopped putting money in her account. We just use it because we have nowhere else to put it. So that's another. So this is a place where now we have a place to put it, and it's their money. It's still, because of the limitations of it, for most families, as you know, Keith, I never say all because whenever you say all, you're always wrong. I don't know if that was a good way to say that, but you know, for most families, it's not going to be the account where the parents or grandparents want to put your money, especially when you pass away, to fund the rest of your child's lifetime needs. It's just still not that account.
Right. Because what will happen is, if they've been receiving any of these government benefits, the government's going to come back later and take that money to repay itself. Now, let me take a real quick question, and I love your intensity, Ryan. I could tell that you feel passionately about that, and that's what I love about working with you. I have a question here from Randall. Said the doctor, Heather, can you pull that one up? The doctor who delivered my daughter in 2005 used a vacuum 5 times and broke her head. Wow. Which caused blood to get on her brain and causes seizures. In short, she now has cerebral palsy, autism, and mild retardation for life. I sued the doctor and won. How does the ABLE Act affect her since she has a special needs trust, or does it, Ryan?
At this point, there is she can still use the ABLE account. There's nothing to say she can't use it, even if she has a special needs trust. It looks like right now that those 2 items are going to be very complementary, right, and able to be used together. You know, I have some ideas on how to use them together, but I can't say them yet because I'm not sure they're going to be able to be done yet in terms of when yeah.
Right.
In terms of when everything becomes more clear, but I think those 2 are going to be very complementary. And so the answer is yes, your daughter could still use it, even if she already has that first party self-settled special needs trust from that settlement.
Okay, thank you. We have a question from Richard Longo. And this might change with regulations coming out, but based on your experience, Ryan, what are some of the qualifying expenses that can be paid out of this ABLE account?
Great question, Richard. And so right now they're going to include things like education, some things for housing, transportation, employment training and support, you know, assistive technology, you know, personal support services, healthcare expenses, you know, financial management, you know, any type of administrative services, so that if you have, you know, if they have kind of a, you know, a support coach or somebody in the future, or, you know, so it's really able to pay for right now, you know, quite a number of items. So, you know, some pair of shoes they want to buy, some clothes. So, right now that's kind of the generalized list. I'm assuming it's going to get a little bit more detailed coming up, but that gives you at least an idea.
And we'll have another one of these in the future, and everyone who's registered will be on our list, and we'll let you know of our upcoming shows. Now, here's another question from Melissa Pearson. Does the ABLE Act have to be in the disabled individual's name? Can there be an executor on these accounts? And how many accounts can they have, Ryan?
Good question. So they can only have one account.
Okay.
And the other question, I'm not sure yet. So we'll have more, and that's a great question. Is it someone where, especially for somebody who's over the age of 18 that has a guardian, right? Is the account really going to be in the guardian's name, or is it going to be in the individual's name? And so or is it going to kind of be in both people's name? That's, at least I haven't found that that's clear in the law itself yet, but should become clear, when, again, and I know I keep coming back to this, people are going to get, bored with me saying it, when the Treasury Department hopefully lays out more of the regulations, and I'm hoping they understand that that's a part of people's lives in our community, is that guardianship, conservatorship is a very big portion for many, many families, and I hope they know that as they're writing the more of the details.
Excellent. Thank you for that, Ryan. I have a question from Skip Fleming, who's a certified financial planner. I'll read that. I am a fee-only advisor and financial planner, as well as the father of a special need daughter. When I retired from the military, I elected for my daughter to receive an SBP when I pass. I'm not sure what that is, but 55% of my retired pay. Can the ABLE account be used by my daughter as a place to put her monthly survivor benefit to help with some of her supplemental care costs? I realize she will be limited to only $14K per year at present. She does not need nor receive SSI, but does receive some other waiver benefits. We have established both a first and third party special needs trust in place.
That's super. So yes, so that's a survivorship pension that was actually I believe just passed in the new Defense Act at the end of 2014 as well, that allowed an individual that was in the military that has a pension to actually leave that pension to a child with special needs, and actually they're actually now able to leave that pension to the trust for a child with special needs. So that's one thing you might want to look into is, can you leave it to the trust for her benefits so she doesn't have to worry about income limits and income coming in and those type of issues. So there was a different act that kind of looked at that for veterans that have a child with special needs that have that pension. To answer the question about the ABLE Act, it's again, as far as we know now, they don't really care where the income came from, as long as it's already been paid as long as the taxes has already been paid on it, then you can contribute it to the ABLE account.
Right.
And you can make that contribution as long as you don't make it above the $14,000 number in a year.
But again, you had mentioned that in your opinion right now, based on what we know, it makes more sense for the income to be from the individual with the disability as opposed to that. So it might be a better option to put it into a trust. Right?
In that specific situation with the military pension and the veteran pension, it very well could be. Okay. Yeah, depending on those trusts and depending on where he lives and those pieces.
So we would definitely advise him to get with a professional yourself or someone else to sort of talk that one through. And just so you guys all know, we typically try to keep these shows around 30-35 minutes. And if your questions are not answered on the show live, Ryan and I, probably Ryan, will be answering them after the show, and you'll have access to those as well. So don't want you to feel like if I don't get to you that you're being ignored. So I'll move on to Denise Stacker. Are these ABLE accounts available to individuals in long-term facilities? Also, for example, an ICF ID residential group home setting. Currently, they are limited to the $2,000 in their patient funds and whatever they may have in separate accounts for their families.
Yep. Accordingly, right now, again, as long as they were deemed disabled before the age of 26, then the money in that account will not be counted against them in terms of Medicaid qualifications and the resources that Medicaid provides. So at this point, according to what we know now, as long as, again, they were deemed disabled before the age of 26, there wouldn't be a limitation in terms of using it and the impact that it would have on the Medicaid benefits that are helping to pay for the ICF or the group home.
Excellent. I'm glad that you know about all those little acronyms because I'm just a dad.
Right.
I haven't got there yet, so appreciate that, Ryan. You're so knowledgeable. From Thomas Adil, if I butchered your name, my apologies. What are the differences in qualified expenses in this fund versus a special needs trust?
That's one of those to be continued for us. It looks like from the initial list that one of the differences is housing. It looks like maybe the ABLE account will be less restrictive in using money for housing than the special needs trust is right now is restrictive in terms of what it can pay for on the housing side. So depending on what those details come out with the ABLE account, that could be one area where the ABLE account would be able to pay for more on the housing side. But we're gonna save that question and we're gonna table it till we have more of those regulations come out.
Yeah, I apologize for that. I thought I had muted that. So Michael Snyder had asked, is it excluded from the 2,000 limit? We know it is. The 2,000 limit with the ABLE Act is you can go above that now. I think we talked about that.
Right. As long as it's in that specific account.
As long as it's in that specific account. Denise Thacker, the speaker, is so on target with the possibilities that this law can present to our population, as we often are forced to spend like crazy. So just to be spending. So I think she's just giving you props that you are absolutely right. I haven't personally reached that issue because my son's only 10 and he's under my household, but I can see how it could be a challenge. So Coach Cat Hammocky. Why is there a $100,000 limit, Ryan? Is it another arbitrary number, or is there a rationale for it?
Well, the $100,000 limit is the limit for continued qualification for SSI. Right now, the total account limit is going to be based on each state is going to determine how much somebody can put in one account, just like they do now with 529 accounts. For most states, you can only put up to $300,000 in a 529 college account. You can't put any more in there. That's the maximum amount.
Right.
So we don't necessarily know what the maximum amount you can put in this account. I'm guessing it's going to be similar to the 529 college account, but that's something the states, each individual state, will decide. Now, the $100,000 number is the number that I always focus on because that's when we start to lose one of our government benefits.
Right.
That's the number that I really focus on more than whatever the state tells me I can put in it. I still don't want to lose an income stream.
Right.
Why was it done that? Most likely it comes back to that revenue on a federal government side in terms of what they're going to look at as the cost of this program over that 10-year period of time. Again, remember, if they continue to let that number go up, it costs the federal government more money in whether it's lost tax revenue or more government benefits being paid out, because again, they would have to continue to pay that SSI benefit if they increase that number. So again, I'm assuming it came down to another one of those compromises to get the bill passed.
Okay. I have a question from Sally Coletti. Will the individual be able to withdraw without penalty and be free to use as a bank account since its major purpose is for quality of life? By the way, I would never recommend anyone paying for any service out of there that is already funded by another entity such as government or state programs.
I would agree with her. I wouldn't pay for it if it's getting paid for by somebody else. Amen. The first part of that question, what was the first part again? Sorry.
Will the individual be able to withdraw without penalty and be free to use as a bank account since its major purpose is quality of life?
You will be able to move money in and out of it, I believe. as you need. It wouldn't be as freely used as a bank account. So there most likely will be some limitations in terms of how many times you can take the money out in a year. I'm assuming they're going to have some limitation on that, so not quite as freely as a checking account or a savings account or a bank account. Will there be, again, in terms of the withdrawals, they're going to have to fall within that definition of qualified disability expenses. That we'll have more information on once that's totally completed.
Right, right. You know, I just wanted to clarify, Ryan. So if someone has a $50,000 saved in their account, and they spend and they earn $10,000 worth of interest or whatever it is that it earns, and there's earnings of $10,000, and they go out and spend $5,000 on something that doesn't qualify for a disability expense, does that disqualify the entire account from your understanding?
You know what, Keith? That's a good question, and I can't give you a definitive answer yet on it. It may disqualify it for a period of time, and there might be kind of a timetable where it gets disqualified, and then maybe it would come back into qualification. But that's a good question. I mean, again, when you do special needs trusts like that, and you get audited and you use something inappropriately, they do disqualify the entire, or they can disqualify the entire amount of the special needs trust, which then just becomes an asset of the child, and then you just the trust is over, and you got to figure out what to do, losing benefits, things like that. So if it works like that, then if you do something incorrectly and it doesn't fall within those withdrawal parameters, and it works like a special needs trust, then yes, it would be disqualified, and then that asset would count towards that $2,000 number. So you would lose that exempt status of the account.
So it sounds like it's something we definitely need to get competent counsel on.
Yes, and we definitely need to know for sure.
You need to know for sure, because you accidentally do it the wrong way, and all of a sudden what you were trying to do for your child is no longer available, and he or she is scrambling, and you're no longer there potentially to help fix it. So
and so it
concerns me.
Yeah, so it's still one of those accounts where, you know, and I'm not saying this to this is not a a selfish statement or a self-proclaiming statement, but it is you're gonna have to manage it and have a good deal of knowledge of how to manage it, similar to a special needs trust. And because it's so important, and those benefits are so important, and the benefits are worth hundreds of thousands of dollars, you know, not that I recommend against everybody manage it themselves, but I still don't think it's a do-it-yourself type of account.
Right. Yeah, especially given what could possibly happen if you do it wrong. So I know we're going to cover that again when we get together, but I wanted, somebody had asked, do we have any time frame for when the, I think Monica Spencer had asked, do we have any time frame when the government's going to be done with its regulations? Are they going to move slow as molasses?
Which is what we would expect. No, I'm just kidding. For any government officials, I was just joking.
Right.
Just joking. No, Monica, that's a good question. What they're anticipating is they should have that done within 4 or 5 months is their goal, to have that all written out. And then it's up to the states to decide how to bring those accounts to the marketplace, to the consumer, to families. So my hope is that they're available for families before the end of the year, before the end of 2015.
Well, and we're gonna wrap this up in just a minute because I want to stick to our relative time frame. But Kathleen Rogers has a good question, which is the same question I have. So why not just use the special needs trust? It seems like the trust, if properly set up from someone that knows what they're doing, not from the 1999 service plan from your employer, but from someone who specializes in it. Special needs trust, because you don't have the $100,000 limitation. You have a little bit more flexibility. I know it costs more to set up, but if done properly, isn't it a good solution for people as well?
the special and that's what I want to make sure that we don't have a misunderstanding by families, is to say, hey, now we have the ABLE account, we don't need a special needs trust anymore, right? For most families, that's not the case. Again, I agree with you, Keith. I agree with Kathleen that yes, a special needs trust is still going to be a cornerstone of special needs planning. Absolutely. because it doesn't have the maximum dollar limits. It doesn't have the annual contribution limits of that gift tax exclusion, which is $14,000 this year. If done properly, as Keith said, it doesn't have the payback provision to Medicaid, so if dollars are left in that third-party special needs trust when your child passes away, then it can go to your other family members, and Medicaid doesn't get their hands on it. So special needs trust is still a very valuable tool, and for most families and most parents, that's where you're going to put your money to help fund your child's lifetime needs, right? The ABLE account more comes into if your child has money and they're working and building assets and getting gifts from grandma or getting Christmas and birthday gifts, that's the account to use for them.
As long as the gift is not more than $14,000, the total
right.
is not more than $14,000. Now let me ask you a question here, Ryan. I'm curious about. So could the child's ABLE account fund the creation of the special needs trust? So if parents gifted $5,000 into the ABLE account, that's under the $14,000, and one of the potential expenses is legal fees and other kind of stuff, could it fund that out of qualified expenses?
Could it fund the cost of setting up a special needs trust?
Correct.
Yes, it can. It can fund those expenses. That would kind of be one of those administrative expenses.
Right.
You know, the question that I'm going to have when I use the regulations is, can money from a special needs trust go into an ABLE account? And there may be reasons why you would want to do that at different times, right? And different ways at different times of their life of why you would want to do that. Now, I'm not sure we're going to be able to yet. Again, it's going to be much more clear when those regulations are finished.
All right. I'm going to end the show with this. Elizabeth Heston, can you email a question? You can email a question, but our preference is that you post the questions here so everyone else has the benefit of the response. So if you don't mind, that would be great. Unfortunately, everybody, we've reached sort of the end of our time together. I want to keep you, make sure you guys are aware that we have an upcoming show to deal with the top 10 mistakes that parents make as it relates to special needs planning. It's a must watch show because Ryan's going to cover what we do wrong as parents to make sure that we don't make the mistakes that others have made and I have made. So that's going to be an exciting one. We'll email you about that. It'll be coming up in a couple weeks. Ryan, do you have anything else to add when we close here?
I just have to add, if again, Elizabeth, again, we appreciate you putting the questions on the board so that other people can see the answers. If you have something personal, certainly understood. You know, feel free to, if it's a question that I may be able to help you with, feel free to email me at rplatt@aspecialneedsplan.com or info@aspecialneedsplan.com. Especially if it's of a personal nature, you don't really want to put that on a board. You know, please feel free to go to our website, aspecialneedsplan.com, and email us. You know, and that'll be fine also.
All right, everybody. I just want to thank you again, Ryan, for being our special guest today, and thank everybody who was in attendance today and for the very awesome questions. We'll keep you posted when we have the second segment when the regulations are done, and we'll be able to dig deeper into that too. Thank you, everybody, for being here, and Ryan, you are the best.
Hey, Keith, you're going to make me blush.
All right, thank you, everyone. Have a great day.
You got it. Thank you, everybody.